All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Dina, and I am the one of the team here at Elderwerks. I and my coworker Rosemary handle our social services needs. Just a reminder that today's event is being recorded, and we will be posting this recording on our YouTube channel. Before we begin, I would like to just let you know a little bit about Elderwerks. Elderwerks is a not-for-profit 501c3 organization whose mission is to provide older adults, seniors, their families, and professionals age counseling, referrals, and guidance in regards to senior living, home care, supportive services at home, and the education to be able to live well and to make appropriate decisions. This includes our education, of which you're here for today, and the guidance is really all about aging well and being able to live their lives to the fullest. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please do put them in the chat, and Chris will answer them at the end of the program today. The closed captioning feature is enabled, so that is on, and if you need to use that, please feel free to. You will be muted throughout the presentation, and at the end, when we do answer questions, you'll be free to unmute yourself if need be, but put those questions in the chat. I'm going to add at the end of the presentation today a survey on our caregiving support groups that we have. So please feel free to fill that out and send that in. We currently have a caregiving group that meets twice a month, and we are putting together additional monthly caregiver groups, and we just want some additional feedback on that. So again, my name is Dina, and thank you for joining us today. Chris Petrik, and I mess that up every time, and I bet you I did. Nope, I did it. Okay. Is our Director of Education for Elderwerks. She is also our Dementia Reality Master Trainer, and is a nurse. There's much more to that than what I am putting in there, but today she is here to present dilemmas of caregiving from burnout to self-care. And Chris, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Dina, and welcome everyone today. I'm going to start out with a quote because I think it really resonates with everybody who may be out there. And these are the words of Rosalind Carter. And Rosalind Carter said, there are 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. And at some point, that's going to be one of us. So welcome everyone today. The first thing I'm going to do is get rid of these video panels so you're not distracted. And I'm going to hide the floating panels so there's no black in the middle of our screen anymore. And that should be going away in a minute. So today we're going to explore the biggest crisis in caregiving, and that's called caregiver burnout. And some of you may have experienced that already, or you're anxious about that happening. So really what we're going to talk about, what it is, the common feelings that you have with burnout, how it affects someone physically and emotionally, tips to prevent caregiver burnout, and then sources for assistance for caregivers. So almost every caretaker experiences burnout at some point. If it doesn't happen and if it does happen and it's not addressed, the caregiver eventually becomes unable to provide care. For this reason, caregiver burnout can be harmful and to the person that's receiving care, as well as the caregiver. This is interesting that a large study in the journals of Gerontological Trusted Source even found that caregivers who felt they were under a lot of strain had a greater risk of dying than caretakers who felt little or no strain. So we know that caregiving can be both emotionally, physical, and mentally exhausting for people in those caregiving roles. Caregiver statistics that we have seen, caregivers of a person living with dementia often face great emotional, social, physical, and financial costs. Some of the statistics are taken from a study done in 2017. As we looked at different groups and what they experienced, there were 20% that said caregiving caused them financial strain. 20% felt the physical strain of caregiving. Informal caregivers, that might be you who are caring for someone at home, because we know there's professional caregivers and then there's what we call informal caregivers, or that personal caregiver. But informal caregivers provide about 85% of the care to older adults. More dementia caregivers are women, and over 1/3 are daughters, and more women caregivers live with the person living with dementia than men. So this just kind of gives you a little statistics on caregiving in general, and also mixed with if you're taking care of someone living with dementia. We know that caregiving is not just for people who are living with dementia. We know there's people who have chronic diseases. They may be cardiac, they may be lung issues. It could be someone who's a very compromised diabetic. But we know that not only is there caregiving for people living with dementia, but other chronic long-term illnesses as well. There are special caregiver groups. Among those groups, we should look at what's called the sandwich generation. And this group may have put off childbearing and raising a family, and now find themselves not only raising a family, but a caregiver to a family member as well. If we look at full-time working caregivers, much of the population today works full-time. The demand to make ends meet financially is evident. As other culture groups, such as Asians, who typically would stay at home and be responsible for caregiving, not only as for a parent, but also caregiver for their in-laws, they find that for many, this is no longer the case. They can't afford to stay home. So we're seeing a shift in caregiving that's going maybe outside the home. Then we look at the LGBTQ plus caregiver. And the LGBTQ caregiver has a different dynamic to it, because many times people in this LGBTQ plus group have been disowned by their own families. So they have to create a family for themselves. So they may rely on friends and people who are in the similar cultural group that they are, but it may not be an immediate relative. And so that kind of shifts that responsibility of caregiving. Then we have various cultural groups in caregiving. And we look at the African American, the Asian American, we look at all different groups and how caregiving impacts those particular groups. I do a program on cultural diversity in dementia care, and it's very interesting how each culture just views dementia itself and how that impacts caregiving. So one of the reasons people say that they experience or feeling close to caregiver burnout is because conflicting demands, as you try to balance the needs of the care recipient, co-workers and employers, family members, and yourself, it can get pretty stressful and difficult. You see that your lack of control over money and resources, and a lack of skills needed to effectively manage a loved one's care. You'll often hear about someone who hires a caregiver outside of an agency as a live-in because they're cheaper. but they're not bonded and licensed. And then they have the experience of being, theft within their own home, or you have people that don't want to do that because of lack of privacy. And people don't want people from outside their home, even with an agency, in their house. So again, there's that lack of privacy. We look at role confusion, difficulty separating your role as a caregiver and as the parent, the sibling, or their spouse of the care recipient. And, I had a mother who had Alzheimer's disease. And I know at one point, where she was becoming more and more dependent on care and having difficulty making decisions, she would say to me, when did you become the parent and I became the child? And so that really starts some negative feelings between the person needing care and the caregiver itself. Oftentimes there's unreasonable demands placed upon the caregiver by other family members or the person being cared for. We see this a lot in older adult care, where, especially since the family unit has now been spread across the United States because of the demands of working outside your community, people have shifted and moved, and you don't have that core help right at home. So, when I had my mom, and we were caring for her, I had a brother that lived in Wyoming, and it was not unusual for him to call and give unreasonable demands and unreasonable expectations because he didn't know the course of dementia and what we could do for mom and what we couldn't. And that again puts another layer of burden on the caregiver when you have those unreasonable demands and unrealistic expectations. Financial, again, one of the things that we look at, and again, I'm going to refer to dementia for a minute, but this could happen to anybody if you become disabled and for example, someone has younger onset dementia, and they're the breadwinner in that family. You're going to have a catastrophic financial situation because that breadwinner can no longer work full time anymore. Even as simple as before my mom had dementia, my father-in-law had a stroke, and he lived with us for several years. And I had 3 kids in college, so I could not stay home and be a full-time caregiver. Thank God we had adult daycare. And so my father-in-law was able to go to adult daycare because at least I knew that he was being cared for during the day, but he could come back to the family unit at the end of the day. And I could continue working because at that point, if I didn't, my kids couldn't go to college. So again, that's just one example of financial, but there's many other out there. And then isolation is a big thing. For caregivers, it's common due to the time constraints that it has. And they may feel very isolated. They may feel unsafe to leave their home. They may feel uncomfortable leaving that person with anybody else. And that really leaves them no extra time. And they have that disconnect from family and friends that often will occur. And so again, the isolation puts a lot of weight on them too. There is a lot of studies that are being done, and they actually were looking at those during COVID about isolation itself and how it changes the human brain, how it causes depression, how it shifts your thinking. And so it's really important, and we'll talk about taking care of ourselves when we're caregivers, but it's really important not to be isolated because that just kind of gets us into a bad place. For every caregiver out there, you are the boots on the ground. And they don't really, sometimes people don't think of you as boots on the ground, but you are the most important link to the type of care that someone's going to receive from a healthcare professional. Because you're going to listen to what the nurses and the doctors are telling you, and then you are going to be able to help with that person to be able to continue that plan of care. You are going to be able to make sure that their medicine gets taken care of. You are the person who makes sure that the next doctor's appointment is scheduled. You are the person that will call for those appointments, eye doctors, and everything else that that person who needs caregiving needs. So you're on the boots, you're called the boots on the ground for these people, because you're advocating for them while you're caring for them every day. And it's a big job. We know that caregivers play multiple roles, and that's why we call them the boots on the ground. First of all, you're the care provider. You're the one making sure that they get fed, their clothes are clean, they are engaged in an activity, they are getting, bathed, whatever it takes for their activities of daily living. You're also their care coordinator. You're the person that may be scheduling their physical therapy if they need it, or a doctor's appointment. You're also the information resource. So when a person cannot advocate for themselves anymore, you're the person that says, Mom had a UTI last week, and we took her to the treatment center, and they put her on an antibiotic, because if there's not an electronic medical record that transfers that information, the next healthcare professional that cares for that person is not going to know that information. And that can be very important. You're the advocate for them. If you feel that they're not getting treated well, or you feel that they're having a side effect from a medication, or you feel they need to see the doctor more frequently, you're the one that is saying that these things should occur. So you're advocating for them. And then you're also the emotional supporter for them. You're supporting for them when they're feeling down. You're engaging with them when they're able to do that. And then you're the quality sentinel. And that really kind of goes into advocating, but you might say, all right, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't look good. We need to stop here. So look at all the roles the caregivers play every day, and you don't even realize you're doing it. But as caregivers, we really do a lot. Because of that, and because it can cause a lot of strain on us physically, emotionally, and mentally, we have some warning signs, and sometimes we don't pay attention to those. And here is a list of some of those warning signs. You don't have to have all of them. You may have just a couple of them. Some people feel anxious. I'll give you the highlighted ones that most people talk about. Anxiety, exhaustion, depression. They feel like they have no control over their life anymore. Lack of energy. They're just exhausted at the end of the day. Look at those roles you just filled. You are going to be tired at the end of the day. You neglect your own health. I have a friend who's a caregiver for her mother, and I just talked with her yesterday. She has a little bump, or had a little bump in her abdomen 2 years ago. 2 years ago. And it has gotten bigger. And she finally went to the doctor 2 years later. And I said, why didn't you do this 2 years ago? And she said, I don't have time. So she's neglecting her own health. And let me tell you, we can't be good for other people if we're not healthy ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves before we can take care of other people. So you absolutely cannot neglect your own health. So if we break it down, our physical signs, a lot of aches and pains. You may feel some fatigue. Frequent headaches is always a sign of stress. Increased or decreased appetite. It depends on if you're a binge eater with stress, or you go into that, I have no appetite mode. It's different for everybody. Some people will not sleep well at night, and you may end up getting more colds, more cold sores, more minor infections, because when you have all of this going on in your body, it depresses your immune system. So it's not unusual for these things to happen. For me personally, this is when I know I'm being stressed out, or my immune system is being taxed. I end up with a cold sore on my lip. That's my sign. I need to scale back. I need to take care of myself because that's my body telling me something. And for everyone, it's going to be a little different. Our emotional signs, there's that anxiety again. Some people, when they're depressed or anxious, they feel better just isolating. And we know that isolation, as I said, kind of changes the brain chemistry. So we're talking about avoidance of people and crowds, depression, exhaustion again, lack of energy, losing interest in things that you do. Effects of chronic stress on your brain. This is a little video. It's going to talk about what happens to your brain when it's stressed out.
Welcome to this week's Brain-Based Wellness News. In today's news, we look at the impact chronic stress has on your brain health and function. Approximately 90% of all doctor visits are due to stress-related health ailments. Chronic stress increases the stress hormone cortisol. Excess cortisol contributes to a wide variety of health problems, including weight gain, osteoporosis, digestive problems, hormone imbalances, cancer, heart disease, and diabetes. Cortisol also affects brain health and mental well-being with symptoms like memory loss, brain fog, anxiety, and worry. Some proactive steps you can take to reduce the impact stress has on your brain are: eat a diet high in antioxidant-rich foods like fruit, vegetables, dark chocolate, and green tea. Get daily physical exercise. Start a daily meditation practice. Get plenty of sleep. And of course, chiropractic care has been found to help people better manage their stress. Get regular chiropractic.
So I'm going to stop that there. I'm not telling you to get chiropractic care one way or the other. It's just really a good little video on what happens to our brain and the release of cortisol. And it just happens to be a chiropractic commercial, so to speak. But what they said was very true. And there is research and statistics that can back that up. When you get so stressed out and when you get burnt out, you get what's called compassion fatigue. Now, I will tell you, among caregivers that were professional during the COVID outbreak, there were a lot of people experiencing compassion fatigue. And what we know is that it can also happen to caregivers, personal caregivers. And what it is it happens suddenly. There's a loss of the ability to really empathize and have compassion for other people, including the person that you're caring for. It is caused by extreme stress that comes with empathetic views, suffering, and traumatic experience of people you care for. Again, like I said, it's studied in healthcare workers, but it also happens to caregivers. We had a lot of caregivers, and it's very scary to say there is going to be a nursing shortage in a couple years. It's really already started because people left the workforce during COVID because of compassion fatigue. When they realized that they really didn't care, and there's the empathetic views, when they really didn't care for how they were helping people anymore, and they couldn't muster up that emotion and that empathy for someone, they knew it was time to leave, or it was suggested that they leave. So we have a new group of hopefully qualified nurses coming in, but there's not enough of them. So let's talk about caregiver burnout and how we prevent that. And they talked a little bit about it on the video, but I want to tell you that self-care probably is one of the most important things in preventing caregiver burnout. Many of us follow the commandment, love one another, but when it relates to caregiving, we must love one another within boundaries, which means that we have to love ourselves before we can love one another. I remember back when I was a first mother 42 years ago, I went to a, a childcare class presentation, and I remembered this, that the nurse was teaching the class said, unless you take care of yourself, you cannot take care of your baby. So you must take care of yourself. And coming from a very strict, very culturally connected Italian family, and the mother was the kind of the figurehead, the matriarch, that was not something I was familiar with. And I learned very quickly that that is the only way that you can care for other people, is when you care for yourself. So it's really important that we do that. It really means different things for different people. It could simply mean a nice bath at the end of the day, a glass of wine, and an old movie, watching it uninterrupted in a different room where you're not caregiving for that minute, going out for a massage or having aromatherapy, reading a book undisturbed, or just having a cup of coffee with a neighbor. Self-care doesn't have to last hours, but it can last, minutes, but it's something that breaks you away from that constant grind of caregiving. It's really important that when someone says to you, we'll talk about this again, when someone says to you, how can I help? That you let them know how they can help. And it might be that hour that you can go to another room in your house, or on a beautiful day like this, go out and sit in a lawn chair while maybe the person you care for is inside with someone else engaged in an activity, and you're reading a book. That's self-care. It doesn't have to be hours, although if you could do that and get a caregiver for a couple hours away, that would be wonderful, but that's not practical for everyone. When we say yes to others, we have to make sure we're not saying no to ourselves. So our physical wellness is extremely important. I'm worried about my friend. I'm worried about this lump in her abdomen that's been there and growing for 2 years, now is going to be catastrophic. And what has she really done is she may have shortened her life. And because she was too ingrained in caregiving. And if the person that she was caregiving for knew that she was neglecting herself, they would be devastated. So you have to take care of yourself. Go to your wellness exams every year. Get your eyes checked. And that might be your self-care for the day. It might be going to the doctor and then going and driving through and getting a cup of coffee, and just sitting by a park and drinking your coffee before you go home. Now you've done your physical wellness, and it's self-care. Emotional wellness, that's really the ability to be present in the moment, and is a major component of mental health. We really can't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. We have to be present for today, because if we're anxious about what's happening tomorrow, then we're not going to be present, and we may miss something positive or negative today. And that can be detrimental to that person. So we have to really live in the moment. And again, it doesn't just apply to dementia, it really applies to any disease, chronic disease that you're caring for in a family member or someone close to you. So you really have to make sure that you're thinking about today. And that will take a little bit of planning, and we'll talk about that in a minute. One of the things that you can do, and this is so easy to do, and I got this off of YouTube. So all you have to do, you don't have to go out and buy anything fancy. You just go to YouTube and you type in 1-minute meditation. And when you do this, I want you to listen to what the person who is talking is saying, and how that person wants you to breathe in and breathe out, and you're relaxing your body for a minute. Do you need to have a tape or a video to do this? No, you don't. Do they have apps on your phone for 1-minute meditation? Yes, they do, and many of them are free. And if you can use something to help guide you, it's wonderful. But just when you get up in the morning, before you get out of bed, just doing the slow breathing in and out by yourself, and kind of centering yourself for the day will help you relax. So this is basically, and you're going to listen to this and do
Close
it
your
in
eyes.
too.
And we'll take a few moments to calm
Whoops. Oh, sorry,
your
guys.
mind and body. Soften your face, your neck, and shoulders. Do your best to fully let go. And turn your attention to the breath, the calming breath, the soothing breath. Take long, slow breaths, full and deep. Breathing in, I am calm. Breathing out, I'm at peace.
So this defaulted to YouTube, but that's fine because you can see that there are all kinds. Oops, I think I read that. There are all kinds of videos that you can view on YouTube. You might find her voice annoying. There's some with no talking and it's just music. You might be a beach person, so you like the ocean. You might be a mountain person and you feel relaxed when you're seeing the mountains. So again, it's just going to depend on what you like. But try those a couple of times and see if they work.
Your mind.
One of the things that you can do is laugh. Laughter reduces cortisol, which is a hormone that causes stress, but it also increases the endorphins, and that's your body's own natural opioids that make you happy. It increases your catecholamine levels. That's another chemistry in your body that helps boost your mental function. It improves mental alertness. It improves your memory, and it improves interpersonal responses. I just did a support group program, and it was on laughter itself. And as one gentleman was getting up, he said, that's what I miss in my house is my wife's laughter. And she has dementia. And he said, we just don't laugh together anymore. But in the program that I showed him, that we worked on, there were 2 video clips that I showed them. And someone living with dementia could easily laugh at those. And one was the I Love Lucy, where they're collecting, her and Ethel are collecting candy on a candy line. And the other one is Carol Burnett, where Harvey Korman and Tim Conway is playing the dentist, and Harvey Korman is the one who's supposed to have their tooth worked on. And they're both funny and a little bit of slapstick, a lot of facial expressions. People don't lose that with dementia. They can relate to those. And I said, go home, go to YouTube and find those 2. They will laugh at those. She will laugh at those. The other thing that everybody laughs at is laughing babies. So if you go into YouTube again and you type in laughing babies, there are videos of babies just laughing. And when a baby laughs, we all laugh. I have a 5-year-old grandson that when he comes over, I usually watch him once or twice a week. And I'm seated at my computer working on something. He'll come in and go, can you turn on laughing babies for me? He enjoys the laughing babies. And when he laughs, I laugh, we all laugh. So laughter is a very good thing to do to really promote that self-care. Here's some of the other things. I really think it burns calories, but you'd have to laugh all day long to burn enough calories to get into a new dress size. But hey, if you laugh enough during the day for, a year, it might work. But we know that it really changes your moods. The other thing that it does is it changes your perspective. And when, and so let me give you an example of what I mean by this. Imagine you and your partner, your significant other, were in the middle of an argument and something funny happened and you both start laughing. It's really hard to get mad at each other again, isn't it? because that laughter, because of the catamines, the endorphins, it changes the perspective on what you just had experienced. So again, laughter, very, very good. Strengthens relationships. It attracts us to others. I'll tell you that in younger people, when they're looking for relationships, one of the things that many people look for is someone with a sense of humor. So again, just another example of how laughter really will help you. So we need to think about how we can set realistic goals. I think what we really do is we set goals that are really unrealistic for us. And my son told me once that he does this every day when he makes a list. And he does this because then he feels like at least he accomplished one thing on the list. And the first thing on his list is write a to-do list. So once he starts that to-do list, then he can scratch that off. He goes, hey, at least I finished something on my list. So there's someone who's kind of shift their perspective. But make a list for yourself and set, if you need to, and set those realistic goals, okay? And what you have to do, and we'll talk about this in one of the other slides, is you have to amend that list. For example, I might plan on, when my mom was alive, I might plan on showering her on Mondays and Wednesdays. But this Monday, she woke up on the grumpy side of the bed and she does not want to take a shower. Is it worth me arguing with someone who really doesn't want to take a shower and she still has her human rights to make a decision? Or do I say, we skip the shower today. Let's get to the sink. We'll wash your hands and face. Let's get your armpits. We'll get your, your other body parts. We'll make sure that you're, a little cleaner, and we'll put your clothes on and you're done for the day. Was my mom still clean? Yes, she was. Okay. She's not out playing in the dirt every day. The important thing is for people with dementia, and again, you're setting realistic goals can be for anybody with a chronic illness, but particularly with someone with dementia, a lot of times their hands are in places that they shouldn't be. And so I think the important part for someone with dementia is making sure that their hands and their face are clean, because you don't want to spread infection. And then make sure that their bottom is clean. And once we know that that has been done, we're clean for the day. So I can scratch off showering, even though I didn't, because I cleaned. Maybe adapt that and put, clean Charles today. Let's do a, I don't know, personal hygiene. Just change it to personal hygiene for Charles or whatever, to make it a little bit different. And that goal might be more reachable for you. You want to educate yourself. This is whatever disease process you're working with. You don't want to have your head in the sand. You want to listen to other people's ideas. A lot of what I've learned with dementia, I've learned from other people who have had people living with dementia. And I've thrown away the bad ideas and I've kept the good ideas. I know for me, one of the things was when I went to visit my mom in the nursing home, when we finally had to place her in a nursing home, and I happened to work at the same community, and so I saw her every day. But when she got into the later part of Alzheimer's, she was pretty much non-communicative, and I felt like the visits were a little more strained because we couldn't communicate. Until I read in someone's blog, and this was like the light bulb went on, but why didn't I think of it? You have an iPhone, why don't you put in big band music of the 50s? And I remembered that my mom had a favorite song that she used to sing when we were younger, Sentimental Journey, and I found it on iTunes, and I would play that, and we would just sit there and hold hands. That's really all she wanted to do at that point. So educating myself and learning a new technique really helped me connect with my mother. we have to communicate. That's the single biggest problem in communication, is that we think it's taken place. And again, if you're in a situation where you've had a partner, how many times did you say to your partner, but I told you that already? And what you're saying and how they're interpreting it can be two different things. And so what you need to know, or what you need to do, I'm sorry, is let someone know specifically what you need or want, or what's important to be said. And don't assume that other person is going to automatically get it. Or, by osmosis, they're going to figure out that you need help. If you need help with something, but you appear relaxed and together and with it every time you see that person, because, you don't want people to think that you are having some issues with caregiving, you're doing yourself a disservice. You need to say, I need some help, and this is what I need help with, and be honest and truthful and communicate that to them. That may free up some time or stress on your part once you do that. But we also have to forgive ourselves. Forgiveness is not something we do for other people. It's really what we do for ourselves to move on. And every day is not going to be perfect. And most days are not going to be perfect. But we have to forgive ourselves for that imperfection. It's okay. The thing you need to ask yourself, are they safe and are they happy? And if they're safe and they're happy, the rest will come. So be forgiving that you haven't met everything on your to-do list, or you didn't communicate something well that last time. You'll get it better the next time. Because if you don't forgive yourself, you're going to live with that anxiety. One of the things that caregivers often will look for is something called respite care. And respite care can really be done it's really a short-term relief for primary caregivers. It can be arranged for just an afternoon or for several days or weeks. It can be provided at home, in a healthcare facility, or an adult daycare. And again, I used adult daycare for my respite care. I was working at the hospital at the time. My shift was 7 to 3:30. So my husband was home in the morning, was able to get dad on the bus. The bus came to pick him up, get him on the bus, took him to adult daycare, and he was in adult daycare till 4:30. I got out of work at 3:30. And by the time I got out of the hospital and changed my clothes, because I wore scrubs, I was a labor and delivery nurse at the time, it was almost 4 o'clock. Sometimes I'd stop at the store. Sometimes I'd go home and maybe put dinner in the oven, but that gave me 30 minutes, and there's my self-care, my respite time, where I was able to get something done. So it's important that you consider that. This is, if you have an iPhone and you want to take a picture of this, you can, but if you just type in respite care and put in your zip code, it will give you the communities or the home cares that would do respite care for you. It's really important that we look at the reward of caregiving and not the journey. We're going to have those bad days, and we know it, but not everybody has the honor of being with someone at the most difficult time in their life. And anytime that we can make that person smile, feel comfortable, decrease their pain, get them clean, engage in an activity, we're making their day better. And that's the reward of caregiving. And you won't see that, unfortunately, until it's over. So I'm asking you to don't wait till it's over to reflect on the good things that you may do in caregiving every day. I love this from George Carlin. If first you don't succeed, redefine success. So, that is an example of that, the taking a shower or a bath. I had to redefine that. It was important to me that, because I thought, oh gosh, if someone asked me if one of my siblings says, did mom get showered today? I'd have to be honest and say no. But I redefined that. What instead of saying, did they get showered? Yes, they got cleaned today. And it's okay that I did it that way. So I redefined that success. It's really important. There's that to-do list, and those are just things that you may need to do, but there's also a wish list. And that wish list is for you when someone says, is there anything I can do to help you? And oftentimes what we do when we're caregivers is we take control, and we won't let anybody else take control of the situation. And I understand that. But, and there are some people that don't like caregiving. So they ask you if there's anything that they can do in hopes that you'll say no, because it makes them uneasy. But if someone says, what can I do? And maybe I need a doorknob changed in my house, or I need a new light bulb on a ceiling light that I can't reach, or I need someone to run to the meat market for me, that you put on your wish list. Yes, you could do a favor for me. I would love it if you can return these books to the library for me. I'm not going to be able to make it there this week, and they're going to be overdue. Could you do that? Most people will be delighted that they have done something to help you. But going back to communication, unless you communicate that, you are not weak because you are asking for help. As you think of things that someone could do, put that wish list on your refrigerator. So if someone says, is there something that you need done? You can go to that wish list and say, yes, I need this done. If you can do that sometime this week. And again, we have to accept and adapt. We're gonna change, and we're gonna redefine success. We're gonna scratch things off our to-do list, and maybe they're not gonna all get scratched off. That's okay. Be happy about what we accomplish, and don't be upset about what we didn't accomplish. And we already talked about asking for help. And again, it's never a sign of weakness. It's really one of the bravest things that you can do, and it can save your life. So think about asking for help. Whoops, let me go back. Gratitude. I want to talk a little bit about gratitude. What it does is it turns what we have into enough and more, and it turns denial into acceptance, chaos into order, confusion into clarity. It makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. But it does a lot more than that. Watch this little video on gratitude, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Research shows that adopting an attitude of gratitude, simply expressing appreciation and being more thankful, can measurably improve your overall well-being. For example, studies prove that gratitude can increase happiness, reduce depression, and strengthen resiliency. Grateful people often experience reduced blood pressure, less chronic pain, increased energy, even longer lives. People who purposefully express more gratitude report higher self-esteem than those who don't, and they're more likely to help others, a pro-social behavior also linked to greater happiness. People who capture grateful thoughts before bed sleep better than those who don't. Why so many positive changes? Because gratitude actually rewires our brains, kickstarting the production of dopamine and serotonin. Like antidepressants, these feel-good neurotransmitters activate the bliss center of the brain, creating feelings of happiness and contentment. This appears to be self-perpetuating. Research suggests that with regular practice, you'll train your prefrontal cortex to better appreciate and retain positive experiences and thoughts, and to deflect the negative ones. Here are a few simple ways to deliberately cultivate that attitude of gratitude. Celebrate minor accomplishments. Think about what you have rather than dwelling on what you don't. Tell the people in your life something you appreciate about them. Tell yourself too. Volunteer, hold a door for a stranger, or simply smile more, and you'll probably feel better, as kindness and giving are connected to gratitude. Similar positive brain changes can occur from regular meditation and mindfulness. Keep a daily gratitude journal using an old-fashioned notebook or a high-tech app. The science is clear. Give gratitude a go. You'll be thankful you did.
So gratitude changes the brain chemistry, and it decreases that element of depression you may be experiencing. So even as you're in bed at night and you're closing your eyes, pick one thing that you're grateful for. And it doesn't have to be that you've changed the world. It can be something simple like, I checked off 2 things off my to-do list today. Or I made, if you're caring for someone, I made them smile today. They looked like they were enjoying themselves in my presence. So again, these are just a couple of things that will help you and, to avoid caregiver burnout. So thank you everyone for joining today, and I will give it back to Dina.
All right. Thank you, Chris. As always, what a wonderful presentation. I don't see any questions within the chat, but I can say from my experience as a caregiver that sometimes there's a difficulty in having the caregiver and the caree, or the person receiving the care, be on the same page, and wanting to be able to give them their own independence, but having to lead them down a path that maybe they don't originally agree to. I know we've had that question before in the past, so I thought I'd ask it again today.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. And again, it depends on what type of chronic disease that they have. They may be depressed. They may not see that those elements of gratitude, and oftentimes you're not on the same page. They may be at the point of their life where they're tired of living this way, and you're there to support them. But for your own reasons, you don't want that for them. So again, it happens more often than not where we're not on the same page, and that can be difficult. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, and then the other question I think that we get a lot is, how do I know when is enough? Meaning that maybe I've gotten to the point where I can't be that caregiver any longer, and maybe we need to either have another family member, another support, or maybe a professional come in. How do you figure that out?
And that's a whole family dynamic thing. I know when my mom, and I'll just give you that personal experience, when we were younger and we talked about our parents getting old, it was, I'm never putting my parents in a nursing home. I don't care what happens, they're never going in a nursing home. And but then you're faced with the realities of how can we safely caregive, and for that probably was one of the things. Was it was now unsafe for mom to be in our home because she liked to wander. And so oftentimes safety is a factor that you need to do that. But also, if you find yourself stressed out all the time, if your blood pressure is going up, if you find that you've got frequent colds, or you're more irritable, or you're taking out your frustration on other family members, you may need to take a seat back and evaluate, why is your behavior, why is your anxiety, why are your moods changing? And it doesn't mean that you have to give up caregiving completely, but that might be time to try out respite care and see if the respite care, that short time away from you, is helping. if that short time away from you is not helping, maybe it needs to be reevaluated again. And maybe that is the time to make decisions about what happens next.
Nice answer, Chris. Thank you. We do have a question, and I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit, but how do you, or what do you do when your loved one or the person you're caring for says, I don't want to wake up in the morning, just bury me next to my loved one. Sort of that loss of wanting to get up and move forward with their day. Maybe it's their age, maybe it's their condition.
That's a really hard one. Some people just get to a point where they're always feeling pain and loneliness, and that is the only thing that they see. My question is, I think you have to look at the whole picture. What is that? And I'm not asking you to give the whole picture right now, but look at is what the chronic illness they have, whether it's dementia or whatever, is it causing them a lot of physical pain? If it's causing them a lot of physical pain, it is very difficult, very, very difficult to live in chronic physical pain every day of your life. So the first thing I would say is, let's see if we can fix something with the pain. The second thing is maybe it's emotional, and maybe it's loneliness, and that might be depression. And although depression is not an expected part of getting old, for some people, they experience that depression. So maybe talking to the doctor and saying, she says this every day, she doesn't want to get up there, she's sleeping more than normal. That would be another sign of depression. If they're sleeping more, if they're irritable, they seem agitated, those are all signs of depression. And there is something that they can give someone that is pretty, pretty tolerated well by older adults that may help her kind of move forward. The other thing is, giving the affirmations that, well, you know what, when that does happen, I know, Mom, that those are your instructions to me, and I will honor that. But today, this is what we're going to do. And I hope you enjoy what I have planned for you, or I've got a nice breakfast for you. So you kind of shift that perspective a little bit, but let her know. I think she pretty much wants to let you know that when she does die, she wants to be buried next to Dad. And that may not be today, Mom. So let's go have breakfast and enjoy the day that whatever you believe has given us for this day. So very difficult to deal with that negativity, but there's a lot of emotional and physical factors with that.
I think also, Chris, if I may, I think sometimes it's, as a caregiver, when that question is asked upon us, how do I answer Mom or Dad when they say, I'm done living, I don't want to be here anymore. And I think as a granddaughter, I experienced it myself with, I'm 90 years old and, I've lived my life. There's a little bit of caregiver guilt too.
Yes.
What can bring joy to their day to day. And that's sort of how I took it. Was I don't have an answer for why you're still here. But let's find something that you enjoy, whether it was a baseball game or a game with the grandkids or something, or a chocolate eclair cake. You found something that was a positive, and sometimes that helped, being the caregiver, that you knew you were doing the best you could.
Right. And I think letting them know, kind of going along with, that is letting them know that even though they may not want to be here, they're tired, that every day that they're here with me, you're bringing me joy, Mom.
Yep.
I'm so happy I can spend one more day with you, and I'll remember today. So, you know, how many times, and I'm sure you've heard this, Dina, is there was something just last week. Now, my mom's been gone 3 years, and there was something exciting I wanted to tell my mother. And I thought, God, I wish I could call my mom today. You know, and how many times I didn't think about that when I was a caregiver, that at some point I would not be able to call her anymore or speak to her anymore. So every day that you are with them is joyful to you, even though it might be taxing. And you know, and caregiving isn't easy, but let them know that, Mom, you know, you're a joy to me. Every day that you're here is not a burden, but a joy. And that's hard sometimes to say, because some days you may feel like it's a burden. Absolutely. We're human, right?
Yeah. And I think sometimes during that caregiver journey, Chris, you've also said journaling a little bit. And then when the time of caregiving is over, dependent on why, but it gives you some reflection back and helps with some closure as well.
Right. Yep. It sure does.
Okay.
So,
All right. I don't see any additional questions in the chat. Chris, thank you for your presentation
you.
today.
thank you.
And for all of you that attended, thank you for your time, and thank you for being the caregivers of our seniors and the loved ones that you have out there. The Elderwerks directory for 23-24 is now available, so you can reach out to the center, and I did put that in the chat. As well in the chat is the survey for our caregiver support group. And if you wouldn't mind filling that out, that would be great. And as always, if you need anything, please do reach out to our center or one of our advisors, and we'd be more than happy to help you. And I hope you and your loved ones all age well. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.